This looks different. What did I do? I don't know. Anyways, hey everyone, let's wrap up June before July is over. And June, I was doing good on my weekly check-in vlogs. So thank you all for watching, commenting, and sticking with me on that. And also, I read quite a lot of digital books. I didn't read one physical book. So let's jump right into things. And the first two books are actually rereads. As I promised or foreshadowed in my May wrap-up, I listened to Meditations for Mortals again, one chapter per day, to see if it hits differently. And it did. I think this would be a perfect book that you could have on your breakfast table and just read with your breakfast or morning coffee and get the idea of the day into your mind, and then you can linger on it all throughout the day. And I like that idea. I always listen to a chapter on my way to work and really thought about the advice that was given. If you don't know what Meditations for Mortals is about, it's basically an idea how to achieve more or accept that you will never achieve everything in your life with some habits and routines or other tips. Really badly summing it up as it's been a while since I listened to it. But I did like the little tips and the reminders of them. So maybe I should buy the book to read it at breakfast. We'll see. The other book I reread was Little Mushroom, and I enjoyed this one immensely on the second read as well, which is very good because I was a little bit afraid if it could live up to the hype in my memory, and it did. So Little Mushroom is an apocalyptical novel where the world's poles stopped working, so a lot of stuff from space came in and made everything difficult. But humanity found a way to set up artificial poles and thus is protected a little bit more against the space and outer world. But in the time that the Earth was unprotected, a lot of things happened and radiation did things to the humans and flora and fauna. So this book is all about genes mutating and the flora and fauna attacking people, and it's really interesting, the take on all of it. Don't get me on the science, I have no clue if that is actually possible and real, but it does make sense in the context of the novel, and I don't mind if the science is not scientifically correct, because I would notice. It might bother someone who would notice. But the idea is that we have a few spaces or cities where humans live, and they are very much protected and scared of the outside world, because if something that mutated enters the city, it can affect everyone. And mutations are very scary, and especially the most scariest are the heterogeneous, that are basically a combination of humans and whatever species, and that's very fatal to humans. So the whole idea is for the humans protect themselves, and the book also has this humans before everything, so human interest before the individual, and that is discussed and explored a lot. The other thing that is explored a lot and you can experience is the relationship between a heterogeneous and a judge. Judges are people who can recognize if you were infected, and then they have the right to kill you on the spot. No court, no nothing, just you're shot and you're dead. So that is something that can happen. The heterogeneous is a little mushroom, that's why the book is called The Little Mushroom, who lost its spore, or basically a human stole it and took it to the city, and the little mushroom or the mushroom connected to a human being and took over its cells and memories, so it could take on the form of a human and go into the city. And it's very interesting to see how naive and cute everything is, how the relationship between them is developing despite them being mortal enemies. But it is very interesting how this all is developed on the background of the apocalypse and everything in the world being catastrophically, God, harsh words, catastrophically evolving. Sorry, I'm bad at describing this, but I really enjoyed the book on the second go. Then I went into something more literary, trust exercises, which I listened to on audio, and this book comes in 3 or 4 parts. I'm not exactly sure. The first part gives you a story of something that happens between two people at a theater school and their relationship, and how it is affected by the adults at the theater school around them and the general life of the theater school. And when you start like this and go blind into the book like I did, you think that's the whole story, those two in a relationship. But then the second part starts and you get a different narrator and a different perspective. And then the third part is just an addendum that only points out one of the themes, that the adults are very controlling and irresponsible, something like that. And I don't want to tell you about the second part because it can be a spoiler, so nobody really mentions it. But it highlights the way the story is told and the narration and the way we cannot always trust narrators and the stories we're getting told. So I really enjoyed that. I thought it was an interesting experience. Unlike the next book I read The God and the Gwisin, which is the second book in the, I think it's Fated Threads series. The first book was The God and the Gumio, and I really enjoyed that. I listened to that book on audio and I flew through it. I loved the alternative narration between the two main characters. I love the evolving romance. I love the banter. It's enemies to lovers, and I like that trope, and I don't need the people to be real enemies and real lovers. It's just if they dislike each other and have sort of a reason to not be on the same side in the beginning and overcome that through a lot of good banter, I'm happy. And the first book gave me that. So the second book picks up later. So the first book happened in the 90s and the second is in the present. And the place is not a city anymore, but a ship in the underworld. The whole story is based in Korean mythology. So we have, of course, a god, and Gumio is a nine-tailed fox, and a Gwisin is a ghost. So in this second book, we are on this ship in the underworld, and the two main characters sort of meet again, and it is a reincarnation story, and the kind I don't particularly enjoy. So that took away from the enjoyment I had in the first book, that in the second book, a lot of things changed that I didn't like to change. So it's a me problem. You might like reincarnation stories where the person doesn't look like in the last life, doesn't have any memories of their last life, and also lives before and is completely different in character. Those reincarnation stories, I don't really understand if it's centered on a romance, because why would someone fall in love with that person only, and just because they're the reincarnated version of that other person, they go for all the things that are different? You could just fall in love with anyone and start a different romance. That's my understanding for that. That's what I don't like. Another thing the book did is a manipulation trope that I don't like, and in the worst kind possible. Also, it was very predictable what was going to happen. In the first one, there were a lot more surprises and you didn't really know what was happening. There's a mystery going on. In the first book, there was a murder mystery, and in this one, there is a murder mystery as well. What I did like though, and while I'm probably going to read another book in the series, is the writing and the world. I think the author does an amazing job of grabbing you, throwing you into a world and making you feel comfortable and like everyone. You just want to be there and see what's going on and experience it. And that is really amazing about the books, the way they are written and make you feel comfortable. They have flaws. The first one had flaws as well, but it was just fun to read. The second one is a little bit more draggy, and especially the manipulation trope is something I really don't like. Let's move on to some non-fiction. I listened to Against Technoableism and I really enjoyed that. It was a very fast listen. I think I listened to it on one day, maybe two. It's all about the idea that abled people are making technology for disabled people and the expectations they have, and who gets to decide what's needed and what's good and what's bad. And also it shows you a lot of different perspectives that me as an able person didn't consider or would not even think of, because I have no contact with technology for disabled people. It's only advertising and whatever I see in films. But that's also mentioned and really highlighted and put out there, what we see and what we think is wanted. I highly recommend this to anyone, to just broaden your horizon on different perspectives on topics and maybe take that to other things as well, but also in this special category. Another thing the book always points out, that even us able people right now, we will be disabled at one point due to aging alone. And even though it might sound scary, there is a truth to it. It's the older I get, the less able I am in different things, and I'm seeing a decline. Class is the first thing, but yeah. Really enjoyed it, highly recommend. The other nonfiction book I read was Work Clean, where you take the idea of mise en place from the kitchen into your work life. It was more a guide of organizing your life and making habits that help you be more prepared, more stress resilient, and other things, always taken from the kitchen. The book is built up that we get a lot of stories from famous chefs and cooking schools and how they became this way and the faults they had in the beginning and how mise en place helped them to achieve better cooking status or kitchens, and how those same ideas can be put into the working life. The most things I enjoyed were preparing and planning. That I think is something I really need to do more at work, especially with the new job I'm having. I'm bad at preparing and planning because I honestly don't know what I'm preparing and planning. But in the long run, I noticed that whenever I prepared in the evening of one day for the next day, I had a better day. Things like that. And the book in itself is very interesting for all the cooking stories. And that already brings us to the last book I listened to, The Lost Love Songs of Boysie, Singh, which is historical fiction, something I rarely read. And usually if I know it's historical fiction, I tend to not be as interested. But this one was on my wish list and I just picked it up and I enjoyed listening to it, which made it probably easier for me to read because the whole book is written in Trinidadian dialect. So it is English, but the way they speak is how they speak in Trinidad. And it's a little bit difficult at times, especially for me, a non-native speaker. Might be easier for native speakers, but I enjoyed listening to it because the words and the intonation of the sentence, the flow of the language came across better if I had tried to read it. And also, I think I might have given up earlier on the book because it would be more exhausting to read. And the audiobook narrators did an amazing job. The book is about 4 women that were involved with Boysie Singh, who was a gangster in Trinidad, and about their lives in Trinidad in the 30s, 40s, and 50s when Boysie Singh was alive and they were involved with him. We get multiple perspectives and narrators from each woman's perspective on how their life was and how Boysie Singh influenced it and how they were trying to find their way and their own goals while still being a lot dependent and attached to Boysie Singh. It was interesting for an historical fact. It was fun to listen to for the narration and the dialect and everything that happened, and it was very captivating. I didn't know anything about Boysie Singh before or had ever heard the name. I thought it was fiction until I discovered it's not fiction, and that Boysie Singh was a historical real figure. I don't know if the women were real, can't say anything about that. I didn't find that really in the short Wikipedia article that I read. I didn't do much research, but I highly enjoyed it. And if you're interested in this, I recommend checking out the written part first if you can read it, if you're not so prone for audiobooks, or try the audio if that's something you might enjoy more. And that was my June. A nice mixed bag of different books, and I enjoyed myself. Let me know in comments what you read in June. Did you have a good reading month, a bad reading month? Did you stop books because they were too bad? Or did you find a new favorite? Let me know in comments, and thank you for watching. Bye bye.